We have videos that we have taken on our phones, 15 minutes between when we first got the drink and 15 minutes later. And our family and our friends are messaging us concerned about us. Like, are you sure that you only had one drink?
Two American women claim they were drugged and assaulted while in the Bahamas on vacation. And to make matters worse, they say law enforcement, both abroad and at home, haven't been there to help them. We break this down with legendary former homicide detective Fil Waters. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. You know when people say safe travels, have a safe trip, usually it's kind of like a throwaway gesture. You may be thinking twice after hearing about this story because two women from Kentucky, Shearer and Dongayla Dobson, were allegedly drugged and raped while on vacation in the Bahamas. They say that they made a stop at Grand Bahama during a Carnival cruise line, and according to their lawyer, these women went on an excursion called the Pirates Cove Beach Getaway. They were transported there through a shuttle service that was arranged by Carnival. And once they arrive at this resort, they claim that their drinks were spiked. They were offered a 2-for-1 deal. And they immediately felt the drinks were very strong, but they knew something was off. They knew something was wrong. They made their way then to a beach to collect seashells. And when they were there, they were approached by a man who worked at the resort saying, hey, I could help you get some nice seashells if you come over here. And next thing they know, they're out of it. And they wake up and they come to, and they're being sexually assaulted by two men. Now, they remember that these men were wearing staff uniforms from the resort. In fact, they say the surveillance footage shows that there were three men involved, one that took them to get the shells and the two that were waiting there for them. The women say that when they went to the police, instead of helping them, they claimed that the police treated them like they were criminals. They say they were treated like drug addicts and that they didn't even administer the appropriate sexual assault kits after requesting them. They claimed that they were forced to go to the bathroom and urinate and change out of their outfits. Later on, when they went back onto the ship, there were toxicology tests that were performed, and it indicated that in their system they had cocaine, meth, opioids, benzodiazepines, very little alcohol, and they also sustained bruising on their bodies. In fact, they took a breathalyzer, and it indicated that they were not drunk at all. So in the wake of all of this, the Royal Bahamas Police Force indicated that two resort staffers were arrested in connection with this attack, a 54-year-old man of 8 Mile Rock and a 40-year-old man of South Bahamia. But this investigation is ongoing. Now, these two women appeared on Cuomo with Chris Cuomo on News Nation, and here's what they had to say.
I want people to be safe. And two's not enough. Dongayla and I thought, as best friends, the two of us, we've been together for 2 decades. We thought that we could protect each other and to be safe, and it's not enough. You shouldn't take any excursions that aren't directly with the resort you're booking, aren't directly with the cruise line that you're booking.
Okay, let me bring on right now legendary former homicide detective Fil Waters to talk more about this. Phil, really disturbing case. What are your initial impressions when you hear about this? Because we always know there's a danger of traveling abroad, obviously, but nothing like this is what these two women expected.
Well, good morning, Jesse. Good to be with you again. I tell you what, these two women, unfortunately, these are the perfect targets for people like this. And I'm sure there was some surveillance done on them at the resort. May have even been on the ship itself. My understanding is they're on a cruise and they put into port in Grand Bahamas, and here we go. And so somebody picked up on them that they're going to be the targets. And then you've got these people working at the resort. And so it's the perfect storm for something like this to happen for those people that are preying upon these tourists.
And you taking that story is true that there was one guy who's almost like the scout, right? Telling them, well, one, their drinks are spiked. Two, their idea that they're brought into this other location, and then there are two men just waiting for them, this kind of team operation. In your experience, have you seen anything like that?
No, I've not seen anything like that in terms of the teamwork. Now, we had a series of robberies that occurred in Houston that were some young ladies that were out targeting men wearing Rolex watches, and they were slipping Rupanol into their drinks, and then going to their houses and stealing all their stuff. So, the same type of activity, though, it's not. This is not an uncommon. This is the first time I've seen something where it was this orchestrated for the purposes of sexual assault. That's a little bit different twist to this thing.
What do you make of the local Bahamian police response? The idea that it seems like they didn't even trust the women at first. They thought they were, drug addicts or partying hard. They didn't take their claims seriously, and then it come to find out, wait a minute, they're telling the truth because they just arrested two individuals. What do you take of that? What do you make of that initial police response?
Well, it's if that's in fact what happened, then that's disgusting in my
Yeah.
mind. That officials would be that ambivalent about this claim, and they're having problems there in the Bahamas. They've had, I think, in January they had 18 homicides.
Yeah, let
So
me the U.S. Department of State, they have issued a level 2 travel advisory for the Bahamas. This was back on January 26th due to all of the crime. There's violent crimes, there's armed robberies, sexual assaults, both of tourists and non-tourists, and in both. And so, or I should say, in both tourist and non-tourist locations. So yeah, there is this kind of warning about the Bahamas right now.
well, it's a little strange to me that the officials, given the circumstances under which the islands are kind of under this siege of crime, would not take this more seriously and go further with this thing and interview these women and do the things that they should have done. This, I think you just talked about, instead of doing rape kits on them, they
They
told them
forced
to
them
go
to,
clean.
yeah, they forced them to go urinate and seemingly change out of their clothes.
That's insanity. I mean, that kind of destroys the whole purpose of the sexual assault of the same kits. So, uh, it's some missteps there at the beginning of this thing by the officials, and you've got to understand that what's the major industry in the Bahamas? It's tourism. So, why you would listen to this story of these two tourists and think that, well, we're not really going to respond to it in any way, shape, or form that shows that we're serious about what these ladies are saying, is kind of beyond the pale to me.
So, as you're listening to this story out of the Bahamas and hearing kind of these hints about potential legal action against the resort and Carnival, let me talk to you about our great sponsor of this episode of Sidebar, Attorney Tom and Associates, because finding the right lawyer in personal injury cases can be very stressful, but that is where Tom and his team come in. So, whether you were injured in a car wreck or maybe a refinery explosion or got sick because of a drug or toxic exposure, maybe the victim of securities fraud or received a notification that your information was included in a data breach. And of course, there are many other kinds of cases. Attorney Tom can help. They have the legal knowledge, they have the legal skills, but they have something else. They also care. They have genuine empathy for their clients. And having somebody that you can trust is so important. Every call is free. It's private. You're going to be speaking with a member of his team straight away. You don't pay them unless you win, which just further shows their commitment to your success. And speaking of which, they have an incredibly impressive track record in these cases. And look, if your case is not the best fit for Attorney Tom and his team, they still may be able to recommend you a lawyer using their national network of attorneys. But with Attorney Tom and his team, you're not just hiring a lawyer. You are gaining powerful allies who are committed to your well-being. So if you've suffered an injury and you need legal support, click the attorneytom.com/sidebar link pinned in the comments for a free consultation or dial 855 Tom Wins. Now, their lawyer on Cuomo said that when they arrived back in the States, there were no members of law enforcement there waiting for them. It's been indicated that they haven't really had much luck getting U.S. authorities to look into what happened. A, what's your reaction to that? And B, what can our law enforcement do about alleged crimes happening in the Bahamas?
That's a little disturbing in the sense that there wasn't some kind of a report taken here. However, the other side of that is there's not. I mean, we're talking about a jurisdictional issue here. I don't know that there's anything that law enforcement in the United States can do to further the investigation in the Bahamas. the it's a whole separate government, justice system, and so forth and so on. So unless the FBI were to get involved to some capacity in assisting in that investigation, there, I don't see where any local officials
Do,
there.
do, do
I
do you
think
think the FBI would? Do you think the FBI would? But the reason I say that is because their lawyer also said that not only should Carnival have warned them about the dangers, but he claims that by federal law, victims of crimes who are on the high seas, and he makes the argument this is a high seas crime, they're supposed to contact the FBI, and that was apparently never offered. So the idea, A, that the Carnival Cruise Line never offered or contacted the FBI is one thing, but talk to me whether or not you think the FBI would get involved here.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's something that the FBI would have to decide whether or not they're going to get involved in it. Now, in terms of this, what I hear the lawyer saying is, "Here comes the lawsuit." That's what
Yes,
I hear the
that's
law.
what I'm hearing too. Yes. Yeah.
And I look a, a high seas crime. I don't think so. That's really stretching it. This thing happened on the island. It's a local jurisdictional issue. The crime was committed there. It didn't happen on the ship itself. So I think that's a stretch in terms of Carnival having some kind of responsibility of warning people about these travel things. I think there's maybe an argument there for that. However, when people are traveling, especially when they're traveling overseas, they have a responsibility to check and see if their destination has any travel advisories.
Hmm.
I've traveled all over the world, and I do that. I do the same thing. And when I was in Ukraine 3 or 4 years ago, we were given the travel advisories. Of course, I was working under the ISATAP program with the State Department and the DOJ, and we were told that there were certain parts of Ukraine we weren't supposed to go into.
Right.
And and of course, so there's some responsibility for the people that are traveling to check that stuff out. Now, I'm a little surprised that Carnival doesn't have something posted on the ship
Mm.
that if you're going to get off the ship here in the Bahamas, be advised, here's the travel advisory that's been put out by the State Department. So I'm a little
Yeah.
surprised that there's nothing there that people can read. So
Well,
that's a little odd.
Carnival did release a statement to, I believe, USA Today, and it says, quote, while ashore in Freeport, Bahamas on an independent shore excursion, two guests on Carnival Elation reported to Bahamian police that they were sexually assaulted at a local beach. Our onboard care team provided support for the two guests as they sailed back to Jacksonville. Bahamian police are investigating the matter, and Carnival is providing our full cooperation. Again, their lawyers, the
Well,
lawyers for the victims are saying, these alleged victims are saying that Carnival had a legal duty to warn them. But what do you make of that
well,
statement?
that's kind of like closing the barn door after the horse got out. So,
Yep.
um, yeah, coulda, shoulda, wouldas. I think there is an argument for Carnival not posting something that everybody on the ship could see. That if you're going to get
Yeah.
off the ship, here's what's out as a travel advisory. If you go out there, you are responsible for what may happen. I mean, in terms of if something does happen to you like this,
Yeah.
you chose to go there and you knew what the risks were and so forth and so on. So I think there is some argument there. The crime on the high seas thing, I think that's just he's watching too much television on that.
Well, I won't. I
But,
won't. I won't force you to make the legal argument about that. I did think Pirates Cove, they had a response too. This kind of resort, they released a response. We regret that our guests experienced this incident, and we remain steadfast in our commitment to aid police in the collection of evidence in response to these allegations, including providing police access to video from the 16 cameras around the beach facility where the assault of the two guests allegedly occurred. Accusations of any kind are always thoroughly investigated by Pirates Cove management, and when warranted, the organization calls in local authorities. So it seems that they're cooperating in it. It raises a question of the hiring practices of these people. I believe on Cuomo, one of these women said that they were told, one of their attackers had only been there for a week, which is, equally as disturbing. But it's just a really, really scary story to think about in terms of what happened when these two women traveled abroad there. But it seems, by all accounts, Phil, and I'll give you the final word, the fact that they have the arrest, the fact that there's surveillance footage that is important, and the degree in which how quickly these arrests happened would signal to me, hopefully, justice will prevail.
Oh, I think so. And the greater liability here is going to be the hotels, is going to be the resort.
Yeah.
These people were, the information we have is they were employed there. And as you said, one of them was, had only been there a week. So what kind of background information do they do on people and so forth and so on? Is there, and when you've got this many people involved, gosh, I mean, how many more people may be involved in this type of thing? So you may
Yeah.
have some people that have infiltrated the system there at that resort, and they're there for just that purpose. So there's no telling what kind of crimes these people are committing. This sexual assault may be just one of many.
And
So,
I'll tell you this much: I wish this didn't happen, obviously. But
sure.
what's interesting is the fact that they went on Cuomo and they're saying, people, you need to be aware of what's happening. You have to look at these travel advisory warnings. You have to know the danger. I think this is a little bit of a wake up call for people. Not saying that they shouldn't travel, but a little bit of a wake up call to know what's happening in a place before you ultimately go there. So, Phil
You
Waters,
need to know where you're headed and what you can expect. That's for
yeah,
sure.
really, really scary. Phil Waters, thank you so much for coming on. Always appreciate your insight on these stories, my friend.
Glad to be here, Jesse, anytime.
All right, everybody, that is all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us, and please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.